Today we are going to make a badass vocal chant inspired by the Black Panther soundtrack. Now I am not a great vocalist by any means, but with some heavy processing on my vocals, I came up with something that I liked. I love how those chants carry this track. For this song, I started writing the drums first, and they had this really crazy broken rhythm. But even though the rhythm was so broken, I could feel this quarter note pulse pushing everything along the entire time. And I wanted to emphasize that in the track, so it wasn't just existing in my head. And my ideas of how to put that in the track kept bringing me back to the Black Panther soundtrack. And it had been years since I had seen that movie, but I guess that chant is just so catchy or so powerful, it's really stuck with me, and I figured that's really what the track needed. I first tried to find an authentic African chant using this Ethno World 6 Voices sample pack. There was tons of cool samples I found, but none of them really cut what I was looking for, so I decided I'm going to make this chant from scratch. So I'm going to try to find my inner warrior and record myself chanting, which I'm super nervous to do because I'm pretty self-conscious about how my voice sounds. Chuk, chuk, chuk. Okay, next let's load Waves Tune on the vocal channel. And if you don't have this plugin, check out the free Autotuner from M Audio. And we're going to use Autotune for two different purposes. So first off, I'm not the greatest vocalist, so I need to fix my pitch anyway. But secondly, and probably more importantly, I want to stack these vocals together so it sounds like there's a group of people chanting. But if there's 4 copies of my voice, that effect will get ruined, and it'll stick out like a sore thumb that there's 4 copies of my voice. So how can we make each copy sound slightly different and sound like it came from a different purpose? Well, we need to mess with the formants. So what formants are is they're like the resonances in your throat and mouth that form vowels, and they're really dependent on the geometry of, your throat and mouth. So each person has a unique formant. And when you shift pitch, the formant gets all messed up. So these Autotune plugins have formant correction built in. We're going to take advantage of that, and it's actually kind of good that my pitch wasn't perfect because the formant correction is going to have to work harder for some of these samples. And what will end up happening is the formant correction is not perfect. So it's going to end up modeling like as if there was a slightly different geometry to my throat and mouth for some of these samples. That's great, because now when I stack them together, it'll sound like there are several different singers chanting. Next, I resampled the auto-tuned vocals, chopped them up, and selected the best takes. When I layer them together, I make sure to line up these transients so that it sounds nice and cohesive. Okay, it still doesn't sound the greatest, but with some processing, we can get it there. The first thing I want to process with these vocals is to make them sound wide and spacious. So I recorded them in mono in this, tiny little room, so we're going to need to add some effects. So the first thing I'll add is this Convology XT reverb plugin. This is free. You can actually download it and get all these impulse responses at no cost. So I've loaded up this Cavern 2 impulse response under the real spaces and turned the width up to get more stereo spread. As we bring in the send on each of these chanting channels, it'll sound more spacious. So that convolution reverb puts the vocals in a realistic space, but if you think about it, we have all of these mono vocals sitting in the exact same spot of the space. They're all dead center. So if we want to realistically model these chanting vocals being in some realistic space, we'll need to add panning as well as the Haas effect. Before I add those audio effects, I want to talk a little bit more about exactly what we are trying to achieve by adding panning and the Haas effect together, because those effects work really well for background vocals or anything where we are trying to sit different instruments in parts of the room. So in this simple Microsoft Paint diagram, these orange circles represent the background vocalists and the blue circle represents the listener. These colored lines represent the shortest path between the vocalists and the listener's left and right ears, respectively, with a different color for each singer. Now, the panning part of this is really simple and intuitive, and you probably could already guess that the further you are to the left in this room, the louder it's going to be in your left ear, and the further you are to the right, the louder it's going to be in your right ear. But the Haas effect is what I'm really trying to show here. So that would be the length of the lines. And you'll notice when you're towards the center of the room, the length of the left and right ear lines will be more or less the same. And this means that the audio will reach the left and right ears at about the same time. There's no delay. But as you get towards the sides of the room, the left line will be significantly shorter than the right line. And this means that the left ear will receive the audio before the right ear. This means that if we want to model this in our background chanting vocals, we need to add a slight delay to the right channel for this vocalist. And this is called the Haas effect. So I'm going to pan this first channel a little bit to the left. I'm going to pan this second channel a little bit to the right. I'm going to pan this third channel a lot more to the left. And I'm going to pan this last channel a lot more to the right. And then next I have a Haas effect on each channel. And for these channels which are panned to the left, we want to delay the right signal, because if it's louder in the left ear, that means it's going to take a longer time for it to reach our right ear. So we're going to add a short 10 millisecond delay to the right channel. Over here, we're going to add a short 10 millisecond delay to the left channel. On this third channel, we are going to add a little bit longer delay to the right channel. And on the last track, we are going to add a little bit longer decay on the left channel. Together, it sounds like this. So I'm eventually going to bounce this audio out from my sound design session and into my track where I can further process it to mix it with the song. But before I do that, there's one last effect I want to add just to balance out the spectral components of this sound, and it's the Prismatic Compressor. So it works very similarly to a multi-band compressor, but also the ways in which it's different make it a totally different plugin. So a multi-band compressor uses a series of filter banks to separate out like lows, mids, highs, etc. And then you can do different processing or compression on each frequency band. Now the problem with multi-band compression is that these filters alter the phase of the signal. So when you reconstruct the signal on the other side, even if you weren't doing any compression, you lose details in your transient. This prismatic compressor does the compression in the frequency domain. So it first takes the Fourier transform to separate the input signal into its magnitude and phase components of the frequencies, and then it's going to compress the magnitude portions of each frequency. So since we aren't adjusting the phase at all, we can still reconstruct the audio waveform without losing details in the transient. We're just going to slightly adjust the levels of the frequencies. So it's a really nice, I would say like almost transparent way of doing compression. Like not transparent in that we're going to alter the sound significantly, but transparent in that we're not going to unintentionally alter the phases of our sound. So I can show you before and after this plugin. Just makes it nice and balanced, and also brings out a little bit of loudness. Now, to make that sound design session easy to reuse in my songs, I've chopped it up into a sampler using my favorite takes and splitting out the kind of like lower chants from the higher ones. And when I layer them together, it sounds like this. Whenever I hear those chants, I still can't believe that's my voice, but I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. To close out the video, I'm going to play the intro of the song I'm working on. Keep in mind, it's a work in progress. I'm still writing it, but I just want to show off how the chants sound, including this beginning section, which has some more variation. Remember to follow along with this channel if you want to see more content like this. See you next time.
Chuk, 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 chuk.